This meeting of the Tyler ISD Board of Trustees was previously called to order. The presence of a quorum has been established. The meeting has been duly called. The notice of the meeting has been posted at the time and manner required. The monthly meetings of the board are designed to conduct the business of governing the school system in public. However, this is not a meeting to interact with the public. We welcome you as guests to observe and listen, and we do have a scheduled time within the agenda for the public to address the board. The first item on our agenda will be the pledge and prayer.
Prayer and pledge.
Prayer and pledge.
Please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you this evening thankful to be in the positions you've appointed us, humbled to have the honor to serve the children of this district, and grateful for the many educators and staff and principals that have dedicated their careers to enriching the lives of young people. Tonight, as we meet, we'll discuss many things concerning the business of Tyler ISD, one of which concerns mentoring and the positive effect that godly men and women have on our children. And Lord, I specifically pray that you'll inspire an army of men and women here in East Texas to serve our kids, serve our children, by giving them the attention and, most importantly, the love that they might not be getting at home. Lord, I pray that you'll inspire the fathers of our children to engage in their lives. We know that strong fathers make strong families. And today it seems like the family unit is struggling. And we sit up here every month trying to figure out ways to get kids to perform better, and as a society trying to treat symptoms of a bigger problem when we know the cure is often right at home. Lord, may the head of our houses, head of our homes, be filled with your Spirit, and be loving and joyful and peaceful and patient and good and faithful, and exhibit self-control. What a wonderful trait to have in a father, and what a wonderful gift to give a child. And it is in your Son, Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
No action coming out of executive session. Brings us to item 7, the approval of minutes. Is there any discussion? Changes? If not, I'll accept a motion on the minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes as written.
Thank you, Dr. Nation. Is that a second, Mr.
Second.
Washington? Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion carries. Special recognitions.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Crawford. Tonight we will begin our recognitions for the 2018-19 school year. And first up, we would like to recognize our October Students of the Month. Malaysia Malden is a third grade student at Owens Elementary School, and she is our Elementary School Student of the Month. And the secondary student of the month is Damian Jacobs, and he's an 8th grade student at Bolter Middle School. Now, if you'll please join me in watching a brief video about these two outstanding students.
Tyler ISD would like to recognize the efforts of our 2 District Students of the Month. These students are selected based on 6 criteria: academic performance, effort, character, behavior, citizenship, and attendance. We would like to recognize Malaysia Malden, a 3rd grade student at Owens Elementary School, as our Elementary Student of the Month. Malaysia likes her school and is proud to say the Owens Pledge.
Be your best, do your best, at your best. Owens is the best.
Malaysia says she has 2 favorite classes.
I like to learn. I like to do math and read. I like to read about animals. I like to read comic books. And I like to read Dope Diaries.
Malaysia is a very talented young lady, and because of her love of gymnastics, she wants to become a gymnastics coach when she grows up. Malaysia understands what it takes to be a Student of the Month.
you can do a sport that you really like and have good behavior and care and be kind to everyone.
Our secondary student of the month is Damian Jacobs, an 8th grade student at Bolter Middle School. He understands what it takes to be a good student and has advice for others.
To work hard and do your best and respect everyone.
Damian has a passion for reading and enjoys spending time in the library. He says his favorite classes are science and math.
Mostly the reason I like science is because of the chemical elements in everything in the world. And math can help people find codes to make video games.
And Damian sees video games as part of his career future. He wants to become a video game designer and create virtual reality or VR games that don't even exist yet.
Like making the games seem like they are real. Like a new type of gaming system to where you just put in the game and the game actually comes to life. Like it will look like it's VR, but everyone can see it, even without the headset.
In addition to being recognized, Damian has a special message for 2 of his teachers and the librarian at Bolter Middle School.
I'd like to thank my favorite science teacher, Miss Martyr, and my favorite math teacher, Mr. Bowie, and Miss Smith.
Congratulations to these students for their hard work, dedication, and leadership in the classroom. Their efforts are being recognized through TISD TV and sponsorship by Christus Trinity Mother Frances Health System.
Okay, and board members, I would like to introduce you to our elementary student of the month for October, Malaysia Malden. Malaysia, come forward, please. Our secondary student of the month is Damian Jacobs. Damian, please come forward. Next, we'd like to congratulate the Teacher of the Month for October, and it's Mr. Roan Mendoza from Ramey Elementary School. Mr. Mendoza is a second grade bilingual teacher, and as his principal states, he is an emerging rock star. So, Mr. Mendoza, if you please come forward. Finally, tonight, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has proclaimed October as Principal Month in Texas. And in honor of our principals, we would like to recognize them this evening for all the work they do on behalf of Tyler ISD. We're proud to honor them, and as I call your name, principals, if you would please come forward. First, we have Ms. Sherry Barbary, principal at Bell Elementary School. Christopher Blake, Three Lakes Middle School. Shelley Bosley, Rice Elementary School. Zach Cazares, Hogg Middle School. Cassandra Chapa, Ramey Elementary School. Natasha Crane, Jones Elementary School. Dexter Floyd, Rise Academy. Laurie Greathouse, Owens Elementary School. Tara Hinton, Bolter Middle School. Brandy Holland, Austin Elementary School. Vanessa Holmes, Career and Technology Center. Chanel Howard Veazey, John Tyler High School. Georgiana Jones, Woods Elementary School. Stephen Ladd, Griffin Elementary School. Claude Lane, Moore Magnet. Bobby Markle, Caldwell Arts Academy. Susana Martinez Aurora, Pete Elementary School. Bethany Moody, Birdwell Elementary School. Brooke Parker, Boshier Center for Exceptional Programs. Christy Roach, Douglas Elementary School. Mitch Rhodes, DAEP. Joanne Saul, Dixie Elementary School. Jeff Sherman, Hubbard Middle School. Nicole Schuler, Target. Julie Shoemake, Bonner Elementary School. And Stephen Young, Orr Middle School, or Elementary School. Thank you, principals, again on the work that you do on behalf of Tyler ISD, and that concludes our recognitions. Thank you.
Item 9, Lone Star Governance, continuous improvement. First up is the Mentoring Alliance update.
So as Mr. East makes his way up to the microphone, this is our umpteenth year in partnership with the Mentoring Alliance. You never tell the guy no, but he's been such a valuable part of leading this charge in partnership with our school system. Mentoring Alliance does a great job. I know he'll talk about all the great people and great things that they're doing in support of our school system. And I think we're going to talk about Rose City summer camps as well.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Crawford. And for all you on the board, I appreciate y'all hearing me out again this year. We're here to report some things relative to outcomes that we're seeing, but to give a quick overview to all of you. And I have to tell you, I'm impressed even seeing all the principals. Principals are now calling us, showing up at our front door of our office saying, how can we get what y'all are doing in our schools as well? And so we're trying to expand. We'll talk a little about that tonight, but our main focus in being here tonight is just let you know what we're seeing as far as outcome measurements. The Mentoring Alliance, as you already know, is made up of 3 different programmatic ministries: Rose City Summer Camps, Boys and Girls Clubs, and Gospel Village. We have here tonight with us Carlton Obi back over there, who you probably know, who's our Vice President of Ministries, overseeing the different programs that we have here. Our mission is this, that we exist to mobilize godly people into the lives of kids and families to provide tangible help and eternal hope. So we want to get godly people out of all these churches in Tyler and around and saying, hey, look, how about we have us start serving the kids and families in this community? And there's a way you can do that through different programs that we have. Our first one, so there's the 3 different programs we offer. Our first one is Gospel Village. We have over 200 people now mentoring students here through Gospel Village. Ordinary people like you and I, men, women, young, old. We now have so many people at times, we have like group matching parties where we'll have a group of people that all get matched the same night with their mentee. And so different people you might recognize in the community there. Your very own Wade Washman here got matched, I guess a couple weeks ago now maybe. Last week. And so love seeing that. Friends of yours you might know, one of the most interesting things is people joining in the battle right now with us is even one of the top leading NFL quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes here, got on a FaceTime conference with one of our Gospel Village mentees the other day just to encourage him. And so trying to involve people of kind of a high visibility and whatnot into the process as well. Our Boys and Girls Clubs are now in 18 different locations. Again, for some of the principals that have asked, we're trying to expand. We just can't expand too fast. We've grown tons over the past few years here. So again, great godly people in the afternoons, loving kids in the after-school hours, getting them a light dinner, getting their homework done. We do Bible studies with kids, purposeful play activities, getting their homework done, and all sorts of things like that as well. And so last year at this time, we had about 900 students in Boys and Girls Clubs. It peaked in March around 1,240 students in Boys and Girls Clubs a day. Right now we have right at 1,200 students already involved in Boys and Girls Clubs. And so we're expecting by March to maybe be at 1,400, maybe even 1,500 different students involved in Boys and Girls Clubs. Which I tell you that because as we talk about the outcomes we're seeing, I want you to know it's a growing number of students being impacted in this program. We're still at Bolter. We've opened our first middle school at Bolter last year, continuing to learn how we want to be doing things. Right now they're offering a financial literacy course there being taught by people at Wells Fargo Bank and some other banks that are coming in once a week, starting to work with kids there at Bolter as well, which is pretty exciting to see. Lastly, Rose City, and I tell you, we hired a lot of great staff from all over the country to move to Tyler this past year to put on Rose City summer camps in 2 locations, at 3 Lakes and at Moore. But I've got to tell you, Dr. Hanson and Dr. Lori Wells here in this community were unbelievable with the staff they've hired on the TISD part of it to teach within it. You're going to hear about the outcomes we saw in Rose City summer camps this summer, but I just have to tell you all, they were phenomenal in picking great teachers to work with us. And so as Rose City, as you can imagine, it's summertime. Whenever the clouds are out a little bit, you can get outside a little bit more. Other times you're involved in inflatables. The rule for us during the summertime is if you can, just put water with it, and then it'll be a little more fun, because if not, the kids will melt because it's hot. And so everything from just goofy swords and things like that they're doing. Staff investing their lives in these campers over the summertime. And then again, this summer, with TISD's help, we learned from last summer, one of the changes that TISD made was actually increasing the number of teachers in the academic component of Rose City, and actually singling out some kids for one-on-one to one-on-3 instruction when it came to reading. And so this is one of those times right here you see of kids getting some individual instruction there. Academic portion had great results in this past summer, and so we have here Dr. Paul Penley, who's here from Colorado Springs. Their group actually, over a period of months and months, puts all the information together, analyzes the data, and that's why we're really here tonight, is to let him report to y'all. So, Dr. Penley, if you would, you can have the clicker and have that.
Thank you. We've worked hand in hand with folks at TISD. Dr. James Kirtan's been absolutely phenomenal. We get parents' permission from about over 90% of the students in the programs to be able to assess academic-related outcomes from the interventions that the Mentoring Alliance does, and his team has been very helpful as we seek to make sure we're controlling for the right factors so that the numbers we see are in fact driven by the work of one of the Mentoring Alliance programs. So you may have an academic success handout in your materials. I did submit it before this meeting. If not, I'm going to show you the highlights from it. And so first we're going to look at what happened at Rose City summer camps. There was a reading intensive. This reading intensive, again, was students were screened, and for those who were behind their grade level of reading to different degrees, they were put into this intensive one-on-1, one-on-3, one-on-4. Visited myself to see what Dr. Lori Wells had put together. I was very impressed right off the bat to be able to see what was happening there, because the theory behind that kind of intensive instruction where the ratios get really low and you have a solid curriculum with a great teacher just with a few students, you normally see some pretty impressive results. And that is what we found from this reading intervention. And so 132 different kids went through it. A number of those, about 47 of those, were not even on the reading chart, didn't have even a beginner kindergartner level of reading proficiency. And so we looked at the 85 students who were somewhere on the chart as measured by a particular reading scale created by Fountain and Pinnell. And so when we looked at that, to see where kids started and where they ended up based on the amount of time they spent at camp. You get the results that you see on the screen in front of you now. And certainly the goal was realized. What we found is basically about 1 week at camp, if you were in the reading intervention, ended up you gained a month's worth of reading proficiency. And so for those who were able to stay for that 9 weeks, that kind of made up about 9 months worth of reading, or an entire grade level, an entire school year that they advanced. So that's what you see here, is for those who came for the 8 or 9 weeks of camp, this 100% progress was 1 complete grade level. So if they came in and they were kind of where, you know, they were coming out of 3rd grade, going into 4th grade, but they were at a 2nd grade reading level, they jumped a year forward if they stayed around for the majority of camp, being 8 or 9 weeks. On one level, you have to temper those results, because on average, the kids that were put in this reading intervention were behind by a year and a quarter. And so even gaining a whole year doesn't mean they all caught up to their grade level. And so that's what you see in the graph to your right, is that those who got 1 to 5 weeks worth of the reading intervention, only about 13% of those caught up to their grade level. For those who came for the majority of camp, it jumped up to about 42%. So you're kind of 3 times more likely, if you stay through all of camp, to catch up to your grade level based on the numbers that we saw. You know, this is, in a certain sense, this is a dream to see this kind of reading progress from an educator's vantage point. Now, how did that affect, though, the overall population? That was a subset in a specific reading intervention. And so here you see the summer learning loss question, which is, right, normally you're going to go backwards on your reading and backwards on your math during the time when you're not in school. And so that's kind of your norm, is heading in the wrong direction. And so what we did here is, you see in the middle of this graph, this is kind of what happened with TISD kids who were in the same classes, going to the same schools, in the same grades as the kids who came to Rose City Summer Camp. So those TISD peers, that's kind of about the average experience where you're kind of losing 0.5% of your reading proficiency. This is the reading proficiency that's measured by the NWEA standardized test scores, you know, which has an absolute number, so you're kind of at a 178, and you go forward or backwards. So this is looking at the percentage change on that absolute number. So generally, the TISD peers, or the kids who came to summer camp, are going to move back. Now, what you see on the left side of less than 4 weeks at camp, this allows us to see, okay, the type of kids that are coming to camp, they're on a trajectory. If they don't come to camp for the whole time, they're on a trajectory basically to lose almost 2% of their overall math proficiency and move back about 0.5 percentage on their reading. So that's where kids going to camp for a little bit are headed. But what if they stay for 8, 9 weeks at camp? That's what you see on the right side. That's kind of what makes the headline here, is that the reading loss over summer is completely eliminated, driven in part by that intensified reading intervention for a part of the total population. And then that overall loss in math is cut in half from what would be expected of these kids compared to their peers who were showing up at camp alongside of them. So this is, you know, this is once again the dream of, like, how do you eliminate that summer learning loss from kids who are not going to get outside of school assistance. The progress here is quite solid when benchmarked in this way. You can ask any questions at the end if you're wondering about which data point or which group. Boys and Girls Club. So separate from Rose City Summer Camp, what's happening there? When we take the entire population of folks who went to Boys and Girls Club, and then we dial down to the ones that we have full test score data on from the beginning of the 2017-18 school year to the end of the 2018 school year. Then we take those average amount of growth in math and reading, and we compare it to their peers in their same classes, in their same schools. And so that's what you see here, is that the homework help, some of the access to computer time, some software on computers in some of the schools is able to drive the Boys and Girls Club students outperforming their peers, as you see up here. TISD as a whole outperforming the national norm But these, kids who get TISD plus Boys and Girls Club, you can see we're just over into double-digit growth, which simply means, their level of reading and math proficiency is growing faster than the kids sitting next to them in their classes. The next graph, which looks very similar to the one I just showed you, is just focused on kids who are on the free and reduced lunch plan. So this is looking at lower income kids. Sometimes there's the question, okay, your big picture data, is that just skewed because you have certain students which are already going to learn more without you, or how well are you working with different types of populations? And so we've looked at how the growth is affected by grade level, by income, by ethnicity, by school, and this just lets you see, okay, when we just look at low-income students, we actually have the same amount of growth where they're exceeding their peers, just a hair more on a percentage basis in terms of low-income students compared to their low-income TISD peers. I'll end Gospel Village, the third program. Here what you see is some numbers we shared last year, but I want to remind you of them because this was kind of a 3-year looking back study. We don't put up the Gospel Village standardized test scores because the Gospel Village mentoring program doesn't have a consistent statistical increase in test scores, which from where I stand, that's not a hypothesis I would even pursue thinking, because when you get a mentor involved in the life of the child, they're not a tutor. They don't come with an academic program. They don't drive curriculum. That kind of intervention isn't happening. It's not the main goal. But what would you expect to see from a mentoring program where there's extra family support is some of what we're seeing in these numbers, where the amount of, you have an impact on the character which shows up at school with fewer disciplines. And so you get this 60% drop in school disciplines. To make sure you understand what you're looking at is, we took all the kids who were in the mentoring program, we went back a year, and we compared the kids who were going to get a mentor but didn't have one then to those who had already had one, because they're the same type of kids who are selected to get a mentor for the same type of reasons. And so we compared those with and without a mentor from the whole population that would ultimately get a mentor. And that's where we see the reduction in disciplines and in absences. So that's kind of the academic impact that we see from the mentoring program. The last bit of results to point out, this is true across the board of all 3 programs, but I'll just show it to you with Gospel Village, and that is the Mentoring Alliance. We assess on 5 different priority outcomes. Academics, just 1. The others, character, faith, emotional resilience, life readiness, which has to do with having the right skills to succeed later on in life. And so what you see here is we've compared in blue, okay, what's it like for a kid who's just had a mentor for a few months, less than a year, to those who have had a mentor for multiple years, 2, 3, 4, and 5 years out. And what we see is a slow increase over time, steady and consistent results that pay off with things like fewer bad behaviors, with more self-confidence. There's almost a doubling there. What does that mean? That has to do with kids being able to overcome their fear of failure. When it's trying something new that I might not be good at, I'll just, walk away, quit, not try it, too scared, and therefore you never break out of your comfort zone. And so what we see over time is then building that confidence, setting new goals like you see on the far right, where the number comes up in terms of the things they're going to be chasing after to achieve later and ready to overcome the barriers to get there. So this just gives you that picture. On one hand, that you guys put in time. You've put in a lot of money, I know, to the Rose City Summer Camps program. There's a lot of partnership and work that goes into assigning the right folks, kids to be involved and get a mentor. And it does pay off on multiple fronts here for the Gospel Village program. And so I hope these numbers can come back and give you a sense of, based on how much you've put into it, whatever that may be, a clear sense of what's happening as a result in their lives on a broader spectrum than academics, but certainly with their academic success that you see in the numbers here. We tried to go fast, but if there's any questions about what you're seeing, please ask.
Questions, comments? Is the presentation over, or okay? It's over. So questions or comments?
It's always a pleasure to go and visit on the various campuses. I believe we went to Dixie, or was it?
I think you were at, I think you visited Three Lakes this
Three
summer.
Lakes,
I
okay.
think so, yeah.
Dixie last year.
That's right.
And I'm very excited, as Dr. Hanson probably is aware, of the academic component of the summer school program, because I believe it's very important that our students continue to grow during the summer, and many times when they're at home, they do not. So I thank you all for all that you do, and we're looking forward to even greater things,
That's right.
greater achievement.
Yeah, and I think what you guys do totally impacts our goal, our one goal of successful student outcomes. You know, and it's not only enriching the lives of kids in a lot of ways, but helping them academically. It's good to see statistics that help prove what you're doing on that educational front. But I'm a believer in that and what you guys are doing, so keep it up.
Thank you.
Mr. Cuppy, I want to thank you for what you do also. I was supposed to work with a young man back there starting about 2 years ago, but my health failed and I could not get with him. But I have a granddaughter that works all three, summer school and all three things that you
Boys and
have,
Girls
she
Club.
works, and she loves it. Right now, she's tutoring after school over at, I think it's Bell.
Okay.
And she is enjoying it, and she's worked all summer with the program.
That's
so thank you
great.
so much, and she comes home bubbling every day about something
That's the hope.
that she has done. Yes.
Good.
Kevin, I'm a big fan. You guys are doing great work. I was thinking, though, that the obvious question is, how do you grow? How do you expand? So if you could just briefly talk maybe about how people can help, because I know that's a challenge for you.
You know, I tell you, the first thing we have to do is just have a school board who wants to help kids at all levels, and we have that here in Tyler, which is unbelievable. We have begun to host luncheons and ask businesses to help underwrite different weeks of Rose City so we can expand it. Dr. Crawford knows our goal is not just to see 2 locations of Rose City, but eventually many, many more. We want to see 1,000 kids with a mentor here in our community, and so continuing to recruit people. But I tell you, we now have people supporting what we're doing now in Houston, in California, in North Carolina, in Oklahoma. They're hearing about what's happening here, and the question, I have a guy I'm having lunch with tomorrow, is asking, he says, I'm going to have lunch with somebody really important in Dallas next week, and I want to understand how we're doing this here in Tyler, because this ought to be done in other cities. I've had other superintendents, assistant superintendents in the Dallas area ask me, how can we do this in our district? And what we've told them is we have much more room for expansion here in Tyler right now, and we're still figuring it out. Dr. Wells, Dr. Hanson are doing an incredible job from the academic standpoint, but we're figuring it out as we go. And so for us right now, as you know, people that want to help support it financially, great. It costs us over $2 million in fundraising to do what we do. And so, but that's part of the joy of what I get to do, is get out there and share with people, here's what's happening. And I don't mind doing that because I think it's a worthy cause. And so I appreciate you asking. But if you want to support it, they can definitely find us online to do that.
Just thank you. Great program. Carlton, you guys are the best. It's the best program we've got going, I feel like, as far as really impacting kids right where they are. So you guys keep it up.
Thank you.
I'll piggyback on Aaron. It's kind of we have this conversation not just once a year at this meeting, but often when we run in, which is how we can reach more kids. And so obviously more people giving, more people being hired. No, Dr. Crawford has broached the subject of Senate Bill 1882, where the state provides significant funding for creative partnerships designed to improve student achievement. And this is like the poster child of those programs. And so it requires a little bit of creativity in terms of how to structure the partnership, but would open up some significant resources, and something that I hope you and Dr. Crawford can figure out how to do, and we can take advantage of that and reach a lot more kids.
Yeah, he's definitely brought it up, and you know, again, I love the way the school district thinks with creativity like that. We're all ears. Our hope is, I know the district has a goal of seeing us be able to impact, especially now we have measurables, like, okay, we know what's actually happening. How can we get every child in TISD involved in this? No matter how much they can pay or not pay. And so that's our goal, is like, look, we didn't create this for some certain level of student. I mean, the average payment, I think, is $64 a week in Rose City right now. On the low side of that, that's $25 a week. And Boys and Girls Clubs, it's $15 a week. I mean, there's subsidy for a reason. But now that we see these actual real outcomes happening, I know Dr. Hanson, I was talking to her, and her excitement to see, man, the way they reworked that whole academic component during the summer and the outcomes that's happening. Now our question is, how can we continue to broaden it then? How can we get more kids in it? So I'm all about thinking creatively about how we can do that and working together to accomplish that with more students.
Great. Thank you.
You know, not speaking of East Texas or Smith County or Tyler specifically, but there are a lot of 501c3s or philanthropic organizations that depend upon school systems for their own survival. I'm not being critical of that, but I am saying this is an authentic relationship that we have here. There's results that go behind it. It's hard for us to tell Kevin no and his group. I joke about that, but it's because we've got results, we've got outcomes here, and they know what they're doing. There's a lot of folks that say they want to do it. There's only a few that know how to do it. And Mentoring Alliance is certainly a premier partner with our school system. And our biggest challenge is, how do we take it to scale? We have 18,000 students. 70% of those are economically disadvantaged. 60+% of those are considered at risk, with all those different factors that go along with that. So how can we do that? And that's our next big challenge. And I think some of that creativity is going to have to be investigated for the public that's watching tonight, that's actually in attendance. Implore your legislators to continue providing the resources and funds to TEA so that we can access those creative revenue sources, so that we can actually take this to scale here and make a difference. We had a great year last year. There's no doubt. It's not just a coincidence that Rose City's helped us with that. So appreciate that, and Mentoring Alliance and everything you're doing.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you all for the time. I sure appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item, Goal 1.2, map beginning of year K-3 results.
So the measure of academic progress is proctored 3 times per year, the beginning, the middle, and the end, to see where kids begin the school year. Students begin the school year as far as their reading and their math proficiencies go. And then we do a mid-year to gauge their growth or lack of growth, so we can provide some pretty intensive remediation and interventions. And then the end of the year opportunities as well. We're not just reliant upon one test on one day as proctored by the state, as mandated by the state for our grades. So this is kind of an internal way of gauging all of our kids getting the good stuff at each one of our campuses. We have Dr. James Curitan, Director of Accountability and Assessment. Did I get that right?
Works for me.
Took a year and a half. And then Dr. Christy Hansen, Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction.
All right, well, thank you, Board, and Dr. Crawford for giving us a chance to present this map data with where we are at the beginning of the year, and I'll just jump right in. This is obviously related to one of the district goals, and in particular, it's progress measure 1.2, which is that 67% of the students will be on grade level at the end of this year with regard to these map RIT scores that we look at pretty regularly. So I want to go through, I'm going to show you 2 sets of data. One is for what we're calling all students, which literally just means every student that was assessed in a given grade. And then I'm going to also show you cohorts, which is really more students that were here last year and then also here this year. We can see how they're actually doing. So with regard to all students this year, when we look just at kindergarten through 3rd grade, which is what our first district goal is focused on, you can see the 2018 percentages there, and those percentages reflect the percent of students that are at or on grade level, on or above grade level at the beginning of last year. So 2018 is actually last year. Even though it's 2018 now, I should clarify, that's accountability terms. So 2019 is this year, the beginning of this year, and those percentages reflect the percent of students on grade level at the beginning of this year. And so you can see for kindergarten, we have a little bit less, about 1% fewer students on grade level. Whereas when we look at first, second, and third grade, we have 3 to 4% more of those students on grade level. And that's just every student that's in attendance and took that MAP test. We can look at the cohort and the cohort for what we did for that is basically take every student that was here at the beginning of this year and every student that was here at the beginning of last year, and we said, relative to where those students were last year, where are they at now? So just to show you what that means, if we take a cohort, for example, that first grade cohort, when they were kindergartners, so when our current first graders were kindergartners at the beginning of last year, 36% of them were on grade level. As first graders right now, 44% of them are on grade level in reading. So we saw an 8% increase in the percent of students that are on grade level across the course of last year. We can look at second grade, we see a 1% decline, and then we see another large gain of 8% in third grade. So big gains in first and third grade in reading. I just want to step back and show you excuse me, kindergarten through 8th grade in reading, and this is all of our students that were assessed based on MAP. When we looked at the reading RIT scores, which is kind of that standardized national unit of measure for the MAP system, the scores are really similar to last year overall. They were within plus or minus 2 points. So what I actually showed you is the percent of students that are on grade level, because that can be a little bit more meaningful. The gray bar represents last year, so our students last year. The blue bar represents our students this year. And if you look across the chart, which has the grades on the bottom, you can see that for the majority of grades, we actually had a larger percent of students on grade level this year compared to last year. So our students seem to be starting in a little bit better place, so to speak, this year. If we look at this by cohort, which is again our students that were here last year as well as this year, we see a real similar trend where we have some big jumps. You can see in particular in first grade, the students that went from kindergarten to first grade, and also from second to third, and even third to fourth, and you can kind of bring that all the way up to sixth grade. We just see a larger percent of students on grade level this year than last year. One of the things we try to do is look at this and gauge where we're at as a district, as well as campuses this year relative to last year. And so if you remember from our accountability talks, Domain 1 was one of the accountability pieces, and it was really focused on the percent of students that got approaches, meets, and masters. So it's looking at all the different proficiency students can achieve. And we looked at that for reading, and we used just the MAP projection. So this projects, based on where a student is, it projects where we think they will get on STAR. And we've presented it before. It's about 85 to 90% accurate for our district. The way to interpret this graph is on the bottom axis, on that x-axis, you'll see the beginning of the year projected score, Domain 1 score from last year. And then on the y-axis is the projected score from this year at the beginning of the year. Campuses that are above that line, they're projected to achieve higher, just based on where we're at right now. So regardless of what happens at the end of the year, just based on where they started now relative to last year, they're projected to achieve higher. So 11 out of 17 elementary schools were projected to achieve higher in reading this year than last year, and 4 out of 5 of our middle schools are projected to achieve higher this year than last year. Do you have any questions about reading before we flip to math?
I want to just comment on what's happening in second grade. It seemed to be kind of an outlier on a couple of charts.
I'd love to be able to answer that question. We've gone back and looked at the curriculum to see if we have gaps in the curriculum, and we can't explain the flat line there. We know that this year we have some gaps that we have to look at, but they didn't come where they're not reflected in this data. So we've looked, and right now we're not able to tell exactly, pinpoint that. When we get to sixth grade math, that we'll have a similar anomaly that I'll show you. And we've gone through and looked at it, and it looks like everything should line up. So we're not exactly sure.
Any other questions on reading?
With the redesign of our pre-K and kindergarten programs, have we seen that this has served as a stronger foundation for our students, or is there something we're not seeing because I'm not seeing the growth that I would think you would see? So perhaps I'm looking at it wrong.
No, I don't think you're looking at it wrong. I think we see it in the first grade cohort data. So in the first grade cohort data, we see that students who were in kindergarten last year scored much higher on their beginning of the year reading scores in first grade. So we had more students on grade level in first grade. In kindergarten, we didn't see a jump. We would have hoped to have seen a jump with our pre-K students, but what we have found is there are so many, relative to the number of kindergarten students we get, we don't have a large number of students in our pre-K programs that actually go into kindergarten. The students who were in pre-K last year, they did well, better, you know. Now, we also can't compare those tests because they're not exactly the same tests. So that's a little bit, you can't exactly compare those, the pre-K test, it's the circle test, so it's different. But they did better on their beginning of the year than we would have anticipated that they did this year. But relative to the number of students we get in kindergarten, that wouldn't influence the scores as much as we would anticipate.
You know roughly how many kids we have in pre-K, in district-run pre-K?
I don't know the exact number. I can get it for you.
I express that concern because as a principal, I experienced if a child was not reading on grade level by the time they reached third grade,
correct,
they experienced great difficulty. And I certainly hope that we'll do all that we can to ensure that our kindergarten students are receiving those phonetic approaches that are necessary, as well as the reading and the content, blah, 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 you know, all that.
Sure.
That they have a foundation that they need so they won't be struggling second graders.
So we had a pre-K academy last year for all pre-K teachers, and that was very successful, and we're having pre-K academy year 2. And in the works of planning a kindergarten academy for kindergarten teachers as well. It's just a tough transition to make as a teacher going from previous pre-K and kindergarten strategies and curriculum to what is a more academic structured approach.
Right,
and it requires a great deal of training and paradigm shift. So, so yes, that's a process, but we see the results in our first grade scores for sure that kindergarten curriculum seemed to have kicked in, but maybe not as many with the pre-K as we had hoped.
All right. Thank you.
I think one thing we probably need to you know, we're always going back and trying to figure these things out. Golly, it's tough sledding, this reading challenge. 8% growth in a year between the cohorts is not bad. Now, I'll take it. It's not what we really would like to see. We want double-digit gains as much as we can so we can get to that 85%. But I think it's worthy of this administration going back and looking at some of the campuses and looking at those individually.
All right.
And I think that we talk about Griffin under the leadership of Mr. Chandler, and had a lot of parental engagement going on there, maybe what Ramey is doing as well, to see if those can be replicated elsewhere. Because, as you know, Reverend Mason, we do what we do at school and at the time that's allotted, but just like we had with Mr. East here, right, with the things that are away from school that are hindering us, we've got to figure that out, and we've got to have. Here's my annual plea to our community to get on a reading initiative and get on this kick to where we have reading emphasized everywhere we go, the churches and in the households as well. So, in saying that, we'll do that. We're going to go back and study some of these things that I listed to see if there were some ahas that maybe can come out of this data, instead of showing you this big glob of district data. maybe there's some individualized campuses that we can present to y'all about who's having some great success.
Now, sometimes there's a tendency for some of our parents to believe that kindergarten is like the kindergarten maybe in the city where we have preschool, kindergarten. But I hope we can have them to understand or help them to understand that we're more academically based and the students are having to master. If they don't get it in kindergarten, then you're behind in first grade and you're certainly behind in second and Lord help third. Because those skill levels, as you are aware, increase so tremendously, and we want those students to get the foundation. I even thought about the daycare centers that feed into our schools. I don't know if there's a way you can communicate with them about what is expected of our students when they reach our kindergarten and our first grade if they're in other kindergarten programs, and maybe they can assist us.
And I know that Jackie Cannon's doing a lot of work with the preschools.
Jackie, yes.
And working with them to help build curriculum-based types of lessons in the daycares. So, you know, I mean, I know that there is some of that that's happening through other avenues in the community as well.
Yeah, TAP 4E actually has
Right.
the focus group on that, and they kind of got on to me a little bit, giggled a little bit by me saying, why in the world do you be able to tie your shoes when you walk out of there? Let's just give them Velcro shoes and let's teach them how to read.
Right.
But it goes deeper than that. I mean, you are talking about early educational opportunities with daycare, for lack of a better term, not a structured pre-K like we do offer with our pre-K. I'm probably the talent pool is probably a little bit limited on that. I mean, you don't have a lot of certified educators that are teaching those classes, whereas in Tyler ISD with our pre-K opportunities, whether it be the qualifying or the tuition-based pre-K, those are certified teachers that are experienced and have a degree in early education. So absolutely, we would love our daycares to come alongside of us with their pay-for pre-K. But again, it's one of those, it is a thing that we need to crack. We need to figure out how that can help us, because that's where we're getting a majority of our kids.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to math and look at math in a similar way to how we looked at reading. So this is all students again, and with math, most grades were similar to where they were last year, or slightly above where they were. We just look at all students that were assessed. The only exception would be fifth grade there. Most other grades, were comparable to where they were last year. If we've looked to the cohort perspective, again, looking at those students that were here for the last 2 years at the beginning of the year and assessed, you'll see some big gains, again, in first grade, and then a little bit in second and third as well, but fourth grade was another one where we saw big gains. And you'll see in sixth grade is that drop that Dr. Hanson was referencing about that.
So yeah, that's one of the ones that we're really looking at, because the fifth grade students on the STAR test last year knocked the top off of it. They came up considerably in math last year. Those exact same students, we had a drop in sixth grade beginning of the year. So we've gone through, we've looked at the curriculum. You know, you're trying to look at the STAR scores and when they took that test and trying to sort of make some guesses as to why they may not have done as well beginning of the year. It could have been testing, you know, just the simple act of the testing. It could have been a summer slide. We have some guesses about that. You know, so we're just trying to figure out why we might have gotten that drop in sixth grade. And you know, we've looked at how the kids were tested. Everything seems to be good. We did have some difficulties with the MAP testing this year, but that wouldn't account just for sixth grade. That would have sort of shown up in a lot of ways, so I'm not sure that was it either. But we're just trying to figure that one out.
Why don't you describe the board what some of those difficulties were?
So we had NWEA MAP testing, the testing was down for several days, or it would be interrupted while the kids were taking the test. And so that's really difficult for, it's difficult for all schools. I don't want to minimize it. It's extremely difficult for middle schools who are trying to run a lot of kids through either computer labs or Chromebooks and trying to schedule it in 45-minute increments and get them to the next period. So, so those NWEA troubles that they had this year were pretty difficult.
What is
pretty difficult to-
What is NWEA?
NWEA is the company that runs MAP,
All right.
the MAP test,
Northwest
education.
Northwest Evaluation
Yes.
Association. Measure of academic progress is the MAP. It's all capital, not lowercase. But she does speak, and I have an elementary student in my own household, and I've talked to other elementary age parents. Elementary kids are still a little bit, bless their hearts, a little bit naive about this, and still want, they're pleasers still. They still want to please their teachers. When you get to middle school, it's another test. We've been doing this since third grade because it's the state of testing, not the state of Texas. But there's a lot of social things I think that go along with that, and as far as the adolescent versus the and preteens versus the adolescent. So I'm not making an excuse on that. I will say the jump in fourth grade is phenomenal. And again, we'll go back and talk about, let's go look at some campuses that had some success that added that value. And we're performing decent when it comes to STAR testing in mathematics. And I'm sure Tyler was this way 20 years ago or 15 years ago, as we were in Dallas. When I was a high school principal, we could read fairly well. But we struggle with math, and it's flipped on us. And we've got to figure that out. And we've got to get better at that and figure out what we can do to make us win here in Tyler in reading. I'm pretty happy with our math.
So this next one is the, did we do the cohort data? Yeah, okay. So the next one is this scatter plot. And essentially, my layman terms, I'm just going to explain this. This is the projection of schools that will do better in Math STAR compared to where they did this year. That's my, easy version of it.
So each dot represents a school.
Yes, ma'am. And that's reflected on another sheet in the back. We give you the names, that we have those labeled for you. So I will tell you that one of the bright spots is that the middle schools are using the MAP data, and they really have taken hold of using NWEA and MAP. They've done a terrific job of creating testing environments where the kids are doing the best that they will under those circumstances, setting goals. The kids are setting goals for themselves. That's something that the elementary jumped on a little earlier. The middle school's doing a great job, and they're creating data protocols and really looking at that MAP data and trying to help kids with their learning progression based on how well they did or how well they didn't do. So that is really good that we're seeing that happen, and under Mr. Bitter's leadership and the great campus principals that we have, I mean, everyone is really, really using that in the middle school. And the elementary schools, Dr. Davis and Martin are doing a great job with their wonderful campuses as well. So we see the NWEA MAP being something that is helping us identify where the kids' skill gaps are, and also helping us with shared accountability all the way from kindergarten through 8th grade. Something besides just STAR.
Well, I'll add onto that. We challenge the secondary schools to act more like their elementary peers in regard to understanding where each and every student is as far as growth goes. And I'm an old secondary guy, or former secondary guy, and sometimes we're just too cool to be doing things like that. Right, Gary Brown? Right, Gary Brown? Right, Mitch? Mr. Bitter? And so I think with what Dr. Hanson said is our middle schools need to act, I'll just say it, a middle school that looks more like an elementary school is going to be better.
Y'all do have a different mindset.
If the middle school acts more like a high school, which we have a tendency to do that, tradition will get you beat, you're going to struggle. And I think that the success that we had in the elementary schools last year and that we've had the last couple of years have been a good testament to convince our secondary principals maybe we need to do some things like our elementary peers. Now, the toughest nut to crack is going to get to be those high schools. But I can successfully report that I know of at least one high school that is taking that war data seriously in regard to that. And so I'm excited about saying that as a former secondary guy that they're taking that on. That was where our success lied last year. You'd walk into Austin, or you'd walk into Douglas, or you'd walk into Griffin, or you'd walk into Rice or Jack. And there's equity throughout the system on how they're attacking, knowing where every student is. There's, where did we ever get away from that? To where we were just trying to assembly line all of our instruction and all of our performance. Elementaries in Tyler are being successful because they're not doing this. Very individualized, knowing where students lie as far as their growth goes, as far as learning goes, and embracing assessment. Been saying that for 5 years, and we're going to continue to say it because it's working. So, and now the middle schools are on board. Thank you, Mr. Bitter.
Dr. Hanson, based off of this data, how do you feel about achieving the longer-term goal? Are we behind? Are we on track? I know last time I asked that question, we were talking about the acceleration that was occurring. Are we getting enough acceleration, or do we need more?
An 8-point acceleration is really good. Obviously we wanted that second grade one to be better so that we could get those third grade students where we need them to be. So we know where our work is for sure. We know, where some of the points are that we're having to really concentrate. And that's one of the reasons why data is so good for us, because it doesn't lie, right? You just have to look at it. I know that we're going to need to make bigger jumps than 8% to get there. That's a mathematical, obvious, right? So we're getting close to that year, and we're going to need to make bigger jumps than 8%.
I think we can answer that question better at mid-year. I do think that we have some summer issues that gosh, so Friday we just can't jump on top of. And I think a lot of school systems will tell you the same thing that has a poverty range like we have. So let's just see what mid-year instruction looks like, and that it may look a little bit different. I'm hoping that's what's going to happen. I hope it's not a good strategy, but we are working behind the scenes to make that happen because we've realized this data. And if we just get this data to come report it to y'all and we're not doing anything about it, it's worthless. So
I'll tell you, there's not any idea or that's going unresearched. We're looking at everything we can to try to get the kids where they need to be. Looking at this reading emphasis, obviously it's all over, right? Did you guys see Mr. Sherman read what was that? That was hilarious.
On Twitter.
Really, we're working very hard to get get the reading scores up, and so that's where we are.
Dr. Crawford, you mentioned summer. We had Metro Alliance talk about summer as well.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's a significant funding issue. I'd like to see a plan for what it would cost to do summer school at scale and what sacrifices we'd have to make elsewhere in the district. They may not be palatable, but it seems like that's the top of the list of things we know would help that we're not doing. And I know it's funding, but I'd like to see what kind of cuts it would take for us to be able to fund that at scale.
Yes, sir. We're kind of working on that already for other reasons. I've got a little list started, and so that would be something that we can give you some options about where to target your dollars. I hate saying cuts, but to repurpose or reallocate the funding that y'all approve. We do know that there are some larger school systems that are having some pretty robust summer learning opportunities, Cy-Fair ISD being one of them. Of course, they are the third largest school system in the state. They are growing. Their property values are a little bit different than ours in order to provide them additional dollars per student more than what we have. But state comp ed funds, title dollars, repurposing some of our general M&O, yes, sir, we'll get you something for y'all to consider. And if y'all want to make that courageous decision to repurpose some of those dollars and back the administration on the recommendation, we can do that.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
I had something that I'm thinking about. This is coming from somebody that taught middle school for 15 years.
Right.
The mindset of students in the middle years are different from elementary, and so is the mindset of the teachers. What are some of the efforts that you have in place to get the middle school teachers, I know, off of the idea that I'm responsible for social studies and I'm responsible for math and I'm responsible for reading? What are the efforts that are being tried to get the teachers to work collaboratively so everybody's responsible?
Right. So one of the, the big slogan of every teacher's a reading teacher, obviously, we just had the big literacy conference this Monday. And every content, regardless of what they teach, had an emphasis on literacy in reading and reading in your content. So that's a big one. The other piece is that there's been a collaboration between Mr. Sanchez's group and CNI to work on integrated lessons across curriculars. So we did learning walks week before last. Dr. Crawford was with us, and we went out and looked at cross-curricular lessons, so maybe a social studies and expository writing when we did a big learning walk at John Tyler where they were doing expository writing in social studies and writing. And Bell Elementary was doing something, so it was, several of the schools were. So we're doing those kinds of things. Now, when we talk about literacy, there are three big components to literacy. Reading's only one, so writing is the next one. And so we just went into talking about what our plan is for 1920 to expand that literacy piece in all content areas with the reading we're doing and then expanding it to writing. So the other thing about middle school teachers, I have to say again, terrific principals, great leadership over the principals, and they are doing great work with getting away from the lecture and the sit and get, and they're doing more workstations, more engaging lessons. They really are catching on to engaging students in the learning, and completely, Hubbard Middle School is, just doing great things that way. Lots of them actually. 3 Lakes, just lots of them. Mr. Casares has great things going on at Hogg. So and of course Tara does as well. So I always feel bad if I don't mention someone because they all have such great things going on. So they really are getting away from that, what we would consider traditional, everyone sits down and they really are doing a lot of collaborative work. I can't say enough about the great changes I see in instruction at the middle school level.
Any other questions from the board? Comments? Thank you, Dr. Hanson. Item number 10 is public participation. We did not have anyone submit the speaker form. Move to item 11, which is the public hearing on FIRST.
The Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations, Ms. Tasha Bjork, is coming to the podium now coming to the table now to go over the annual FIRST report. Remember, board, this is lagging data. This is 16-17. However, it is important to know that And I would like to say again how proud I am of our school system for achieving a superior rating again for the first rating, the Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas. Ms. Bjork.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The first rating is composed of 15 indicators. In the first 5, you have to answer yes to every one or you automatically fail. So I'll just run through those quickly because we're able to answer yes. The first one is, did you file your report on time with TEA? The second one, did the auditor issue an unmodified opinion in the annual financial statement? And that happened. And then was the audit free of any instances of material weakness? And was the district compliant with the payment terms of all debt agreements? And did we make timely payments to TRS, Texas Workforce Commission, IRS, and other governmental agencies? And then was our unrestricted net asset balance greater than 0? And all those are yes. So the next 10 questions are worth 10 points apiece. And I'll go through those quickly also. The first one is, was the number of days of cash on hand and investments in the general fund sufficient to cover operating expenses? And we were at 109%. The measure of current assets to current liabilities sufficient to cover short-term debt? Yes, 13.3 times over. The ratio of long-term liabilities to total assets sufficient to support long-term solvency. On this one, we received 6 points, and the main reason for that is because of the bond issue in 16-17. But we lost like 4 points on that, so we're still good. The next one is, did our general fund revenues equal or exceed expenditures? And it did. The next one was the debt service coverage ratio sufficient to meet the required debt service? Yes, 1.47 times. The next one is the administrative cost ratio, which is the most important one to me in all of this. And we are at, for 16-17, we dropped to 6.79%, and we're under the standard for districts our size of 8.55%. That's our central office ratio. On indicator 12 is just if you have a 15% decline in student to staff ratio, no. Comparison of PEIMS data to the annual financial report, was it comparable within 3%? And the answer is yes on that. Did the external auditor report indicate the annual report was free of any instances of material noncompliance for grants in contracts? Yes. And number 15 is relating to financial hardship with TEA, and we did not have that. So for 16-17, we met 10 of the 10 indicators with 96 out of 100 points. And 15-16 was 100 of 100, but again, the reason that dropped a little bit was because of our bond issue, and it'll probably stay about the same next year. So we received superior achievement. The next page are just some other requirements that we're required to go over. The superintendent's contract is posted on our website. And then the next page, expense reimbursements. We're required to disclose all your travel and the superintendent's travel. So there's for last year. The other ones are all know about other compensation for the superintendent, any gifts that the board or superintendent receive that are over $250, or any business transactions with the board or superintendent with vendors or something like that, or no. We're required to show the first quarter of expenditures for this year that just ended, and it was around $42 million. And then did The other questions are, did we draw funds on short-term financing? No, we don't ever do that. And did we have a total general fund balance of less than 2% of total expenditures for general fund functions 11 through 61? No. And we have not had any financial problems within the past 2 years. The next page, how many superintendents have we had in the last 5 years? 2, and 1 business manager. And then really the rest of it, there were not really anything to talk about on that. So do y'all have any questions?
Board, any questions?
Just simply outstanding, thank you.
And it's not like we go in and answer yes or no to those questions ourselves.
No.
That's just the summary. We actually have to provide the data to the state for us to get that rating. So we just kind of do the Cliff Notes version for the presentation here. There's a lot
Right,
of,
they post it on their website.
yeah, there's a lot of interaction between us and the state whenever we're applying our data to them so that we can get this rating.
So the one area we didn't max out on related to the bond, will that, when those assets come online, when we receive those, is that when that will flip back, and you think?
It should
or-
change a little bit, but it may not, because our debt's higher now. Until your debt starts falling, it'll probably stay about the same, and then, because it relates to your debt level too.
Okay.
I was having dinner last weekend with some people who live in a district, and they were highly dissatisfied with the way that the funds were handled. And it made me, I got to brag on you and brag on you guys, and it also made me thankful that we don't have that problem. So well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. We, let's see, I believe we are required to have public comments on this, or to offer public comments. I think there's like 3 members of the public still here, not including the press. So would anyone like to speak on this first report? Okay. Item 12, we're going to pull B, gifts and donations. Is there anything else that a board member would like pulled? If not, then I'll accept a motion.
I so move.
Thank you, Ms. Washington. Do I have a second? Second. Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Dr. Crawford, item B.
As always, we like to talk about the great parental involvement in organizations that we have out there for our campuses. Usually it's for athletics or fine arts. This one's actually provided to us by the Tyler ISD Foundation, providing some additional learning enrichment materials to Jack and Owens elementary schools because they are not Title I campuses. So these emergency funds that were provided by our foundation provided equity at the campuses that did not qualify for these resources to be taken out of Title I dollars because they're not Title I campuses. It's exact path, online math, and reading interventions for the tune of $10,000 split between both those campuses.
Any questions or comments? Thank you, Tyler ISD Foundation. I'll accept a motion to accept this gift as stated.
I move that we accept the gift.
Thank you, Reverend
from the
Mason. Do I have a
Tyler
second?
ISD Foundation.
I'll second.
Thank you, Dr. Nation. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carries. Item 13, curriculum instruction consent agenda. Any items to pull? Any questions, comments, discussion? If not, I'll take a motion.
I move we approve.
Thank you, Mr. Washman.
Second.
Thank you, Reverend Mason. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say nay. Motion carries. Item 14, superintendent staff reports.
Yeah, so John Landis, who's led this effort amongst our campuses, is going to take the microphone now to take us through the high school voter registration. We had this coming 2 months ago. We had someone in public participation talking about the need to provide registration to our eligible high school students. We've had this sporadically done throughout the past few years. Sometimes some community members would actually take on the responsibility to do so, but we're taking hold of this to make sure there's not any political bias provided to our campuses. It is truly a district function. Mr. Landis is going to take you through this 3-slide short presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Crawford and the board. Excuse me. So this fall and spring, according to, I'll go ahead and jump forward, but the state law requires that at least twice a school year, our eligible 18-plus-year-old voters, or students, I'm sorry, have the chance to register to vote. And so under the state law, specifically Election Code Section 13046, here are two of the main bullets from that. It says each principal of a public or private high school or the principal's designee, so someone, a staff member on campus, shall serve as a deputy registrar. That's a great thing because that saves training and time from our principal and campus staff to go get deputized, and that saves them a few trips and some time where they're on our campus instead. So the state of Texas says if you're in that position, or you've been designated by that principal of your campus, you're automatically deputized, you're able to help people register to vote, to collect that information, and to submit it to the clerk's office or Secretary of State. So that's a nice way to make it easier for our kids to be able to register. And the other bullet is at least twice a year, a high school deputy registrar shall distribute an officially prescribed registration application form to each student who is or will be 18 years of age or older during that year. So they don't really specifically say it, but I think it's pretty obvious. If they're going to be 18 on November 6th or earlier, then you register them in the fall. And if they're going to be 18 on earlier or, excuse me, after November 6th, then you get them eligible to vote in the May elections. So that fits our twice a year standard and what's required. So just how we did it this fall and moving forward, because it was a smooth process. Our principals did a really great job, and they had some designees help them as well. But the deadline to register to vote in this coming November 6th election was October 9th. So I made sure they knew that as soon as we got this process started, even before, honestly. So the number of voter registration applications needed for each campus was requested from the Secretary of State's office. And those campuses all had the potential to have an 18-year-old now or on election day. So that was Rise, Lee, JT, CTC, as well as Early College High School. And then once those were completed, the applications were submitted to the Smith County Elections Office or sent back to the Secretary of State office directly. Lee, for instance, has a teacher there, and I'm sorry I can't think of his name, but he's a social studies teacher there, senior social studies teacher, and he's been doing it for years. He's got his system, he's good to go. He already had his applications before I emailed him. So he handled their process pretty much. Once he said, hey, well, I'll get it covered and we'll be good. And I said, okay, well, thank you, and let me know when they get sent in. So he sent those in to the Secretary of State on his own, and the rest of the campuses I was able to pick up once completed, once their seniors and kids of age had the chance to register. And I dropped them off at Smith County downtown at the hub. I left this off there, but I believe the number was right around 425 who would be 18 November 6th or already are that could register. And so out of that number, we submitted around 230 registration forms for this fall. I haven't looked ahead to the spring, how many will be available then, but we'll do the same process then.
So of the 420 that are eligible, only 230 registered?
With us, yes, ma'am. So
well, remember, Reverend Mason, we
I
can't force them to register.
understand.
We put it in front of them, tell them how important it is. There are also naturalization issues that go along with that. In other words, you can't register to be a voter if you're not an American citizen.
I understand.
So there are some of those that are certainly there, and again, some of them just didn't have the desire to do so.
It's also, as with the way the probationary license works for kids, they have to go get a new license when they turn 18. And it's as simple as saying, yes, register me to vote when you get your new license. So, no, there's some kids who get picked up that way as
I
well.
hope so.
That may have already been registered to vote.
And does that 230 count the ones that the social studies teachers sent in?
Yes. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think Lee, I don't even want to get in trouble and throw numbers out there and be totally off, but I believe Lee was around 75 submitted. I know Early College High School was, I think, around 20 or so students. CTC was a little bit above 20. I think they might have been closer to 40, 45. And then I'm kind of running a blank on John Tyler and Rise at the moment. But every school had at least a dozen or so for sure, with the Lee campus being around 75 or 80.
And remember, we kind of talked about this. There's a newspaper that about 2 hours west of here that ran an article that referenced a pretty biased organization, leaning organization. I won't tell you which direction it leans. That was very critical and actually misprinted some issues about if you didn't register people, you get charged with a misdemeanor. In saying that, that's how a lot of folks were provided the registration data, whether or not they had a green dot next to their name or a red dot next to their name, as far as the high schools go. Well, last year, Lee had this social studies teacher that provided this opportunity. Mr. Landis can get you all that name if you need it. And then we had a community member who did the registration for John Tyler. And so, depending upon how those and where those registrations landed, depending upon whether or not you got a green dot or a red dot in this report that was used in a newspaper 2 hours west of here. So we decided not to leave that in the hands of just a leaning organization to make the determination of whether or not we did what we were supposed to do or not. We have submitted ours in compliance with state law, and we'll do so from here out.
I guess I was, well, I don't have to guess. I know I was taught as a student, that was part of my civic responsibility, as becoming a contributing member of society. So I'll just leave it at that.
They are still taught that, Reverend Mason.
I was optimistic by the number. I think 18 to 24 is typically pretty low for voter registration. I have 50% of our kids register. I thought that was great. The elections have been decided by fewer than 230.
That's right.
30 votes. So I think we're doing great.
Any other questions, comments for Mr. Landis? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next up is a report on bilingual.
Yeah, this is actually in your packet. It's a compliance thing. Annually, we need to report to the board that. We're not going to actually provide the presentation here, but if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to contact. I think the contact person on there is Dr. Hanson or Anna Sangaline, the Director of Bilingual Education here.
Okay, C is the quarterly investment report.
Same thing here, unless Tasha, you have anything new to report in regard to the quarterly investment report. It is in your packet. You're more than welcome to contact myself or Mary Russell or Tasha Bjork in regard to our investments. Tasha, how's the interest rates affecting the board's investments?
It's really good. If you'll notice on page 61, we're at 1.92% effective rate of return, which is pretty good for a school district.
Got any idea on how long that was going to continue to last?
No.
Your guess is as
I
good
wish
as
it
mine.
would last a while, but
Yeah.
it's helping us.
Any questions on this item? Next up, item 15, discussion, whole list of policies.
Yeah, this is a first reading for the summer policy review / cleanup that we did this past summer. Some of these policies are as old as 30-plus years ago, 1985. We were able to go through there and make some adjustments. At your spare time, please go through and review these. And if you got any questions about those, you may contact myself or the appropriate senior staff that may reside in their shop if you got a question about a certain policy. But this is the project that we did with the Texas Association of School Boards this summer. Once adopted, you may achieve your complete point total for Lone Star governance reporting after the next board meeting.
So look forward to that.
Yes.
I will comment that one of the policies is class ranking for the high schools that's out there, and that's one that always seems to attract some attention whenever that formula or policy gets tweaked. So that's one that I don't want anyone to accuse us of having snuck through. Here we are in first reading. Any other questions or comments on this? Future business, November 12, regular meeting, no workshop.
There is no workshop. Thanksgiving is kind of funky this year of where it falls. It's in that week of the 20th or so, and so we had to actually compact where the actual regular meeting landed. We also trained our reporting and our LSG, our governance checks or governance calendar to reflect so. So no, we do not have a November workshop scheduled unless y'all want one.
I think this is great.
We've had a lot of time together.
Yes, we have. That
This year.
concludes our agenda for tonight. I will accept a motion for adjournment. Thank you, Reverend Mason. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bergfeld. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay.
Nay.
Motion carries. We stand adjourned.